What is up, guys? This is Roundhouse Ape here with another video, and today I'm just going to be giving my predictions for the next two upcoming UFC events, and then kind of just giving an overview or just showing what the next upcoming fights are for all the cards and what's coming up for the UFC. So I'll just do my predictions for Ankalaev versus Walker 2, and then UFC 297 Strickland versus Duplessis, and then I'll kind of just give a rundown of everything else that's going on, and that'll kind of be it. So we'll just kind of go into the Ankalaev Walker card. It's the rematch. The first one ended in no contest after an illegal knee. Uh, I think Ankalaev's favored, but this is going to be in Las Vegas at the Apex. I'm not a fan of the Apex, but that's just whatever. So Ankalaev's going to be a 455 favorite right now. I want Walker to win, but I think if Ankalaev gets him down, he'll probably take it. And then you'll have Cape versus Matthews Nicolou. I don't really know who he is. I know Cape's really solid, but he's obviously top five, so that should be a decent matchup. And then you have Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benavidez. I'm gonna take Jim Miller in that. That'll be a close one too. And then you have Ricky Simon versus Mario Batista. Batista's record right now is 12 and 2. Simon was on a solid win streak before his last loss, so that should be a decent fight. We'll take Simon, I guess. Then you have Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira. We'll take Phil Hawes. So that's what we got for that, I guess. I don't know a ton of the people on these bottom cards. I think Tom Nolan, he's 1 and 0. So that's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. His name sounds familiar, but I don't know about that. And then, yeah, Farid Basharat, who I'm going to have him winning his matchup. He's still undefeated. Six wins by submission. He's still 11 and 0 right now, so he's really solid. And then the main preliminary fight is going to be Andre Arlovsky versus Cortez Acosta. I've watched both of them fight a bit before. Arlovsky's pretty old now. Uh, so Cortez Acosta is going to be the heavy favorite. I think so. His last fight was a win. Um, Arlovsky just has fought so much. He's so old now. I'm gonna take uh, I'm gonna take Cortez Acosta. I think I watched one of his fight where he lost, but I'm not positive. But this guy's a really good kickboxer. He's just a solid striker, and I think he's just going to be a lot more fresh than Arlovsky. Then you have Matthew Selsberger versus Preston Parsons. Well, I guess we'll take Selsberger just because I've watched him fight before, but I don't really know who's going to win this one. He kind of is hit or miss, I guess, if you would like to call it. That's kind of what I got for you for this fight card. Then I don't really know. I've watched Mata fight like once. Him versus Tom Nolan might be an interesting fight because he's 1 and 0, so I don't know much about him, but we'll see. And then so we'll go to the next one. So now you have Strickland versus Duplessis in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Toronto, Ontario. So it's not, I don't know exactly how that works, but maybe Ontario's what a province. Toronto's a city. Is that I don't know. Or maybe I don't know if they go by provinces or not, but it's in Canada, Toronto, Canada. Uh, it's headlined by Strickland versus Duplessis. I have Strickland winning that headliner fight, but I'm a Strickland fan. But we just saw what he did to Adesanya. We obviously saw what Duplessis did to Whitaker, so it could be a toss-up. That's why the odds are so close. But I'm taking Strickland in this one. I just think I think his style will be able to outlast Duplessis if Duplessis can't beat him in the first 2.5 rounds. I think it will go to Strickland. He'll either be able to finish him in the fourth or fifth, or just take the decision, I think. But that's what I got for that one. Then you have Raquel Pennington versus Mario Moreno Silva. I don't really know much about either of them. I'll just take Raquel Pennington. I know I've watched her fight maybe once or twice. I've never watched a Bueno Silva fight, I don't think. And then in the welterweight bout, the third fight on the card, you have Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. He's a Canadian fighter there. Neil Magny, 13. He's fought a bunch. I don't know if his last fight was a loss or not. but I'm gonna take Mike Magla. I feel like they're kind of setting up. Yeah. So his last fight was a loss. He only has one loss. I feel like they're kind of setting up for a Canadian win right there. And then this one, Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I want Chris Curtis to win, I guess, because I'm a bigger fan of him. I'm not oh sorry. I'm not really a big fan of him. I've watched him fight once or twice, but that should be a good matchup. Kind of a toss up, I guess. I'm gonna be rooting for Arnold Allen in this one, but it's Arnold Allen versus Moser Ivov. I think I've watched him fight maybe once. Yeah, I watched him fight versus Lopez where he won. And I kind of like Lopez. I think it's a great matchup. This, honestly, looking at the card, even though I think Strickland versus Duplessis could be a great fight, there's a chance it's just like a decent fight, just going to decision. Right here, if I had to say on this entire pay-per-view, this is probably my this is what I think could be the fight of the night, possibly. I think this could be a barn burner. They're both beasts and on the feet, so we'll see what they can do. Then in the prelims, the first prelim fight, you have Brad Katona versus Garrett Armfield. Be rooting for Brad Katona here. I mean, I'm not really on either or side, but I mean, I think that should be a decent fight. Then you have Charles Jordan versus Sean Woodson. I'm not really particularly who I want for this one, but that's just the matchup. You see these two here, Roman. I don't really know any of these four. I've not watched. I've watched Ghislaine Robertson. I seen her grappling match with Rose Namajunas, but that's kind of all I know about her. But I'm gonna take her versus Paulina Viviana or whatever her name is. And then I'm not really familiar with any of these people at the bottom. But that's what you have for 297. So that's kind of my picks, I guess, for the first two events. Uh, when the next pay-per-view comes around, I'll make a pick for that. I don't know if I'm gonna necessarily do picks for these ones or not. We'll see. But I'm gonna definitely do pick for the next 298 pay-per-view. But we'll just go run down some of the main fights that have been put out for these next events. So we have Drew Dober fighting Mochinho in the lightweight bout. That should be a good fight for Dober. I think he might have lost his last one, but that's gonna be decent for him. One. I'm gonna take Dober in this one, just 'cause I kind of want him to win. And then you have Nasruddin Imavov versus Roman Dolidze. I think he's fought Strickland, and I don't know who else he's fought. Strickland, and he's beaten Joaquin Buckley. He's lost to Sean Strickland. So this guy's actually not bad. Phil Hawes beat him. Any more uh fights that we can recognize here? You have Molly McCann fighting on this card, which is going to be kind of interesting. And then besides that, Jamal Pogues, which will be cool to watch. But besides that, there's not much else too notable on this card. So we're gonna go to Hermanson versus Pfeiffer. I've watched them both fight like once or twice. I think Hermanson's last fight, oh, he uh he lost because he like tore his he got an injury or something recently. And then you have Danny Ige versus Leron Murphy. I'm gonna want Ige there. You have Brad Tavares versus Gregory Rodriguez. And looking at this card early, just the first main card, that's a fight that I look at thinking that that could be a possible fight of the night card on this card, but you never know exactly. You have Michael Johnson fighting, taking on Darius Flowers. I don't know much about him, but we're gonna root for Michael Johnson there. So now we're just gonna look over some of the fights for UFC 298 that have been announced. First off, you obviously have headlining the fight card with Volkanovski versus Ilya Us. I'm sorry, stuttering right there. First off, you have the fight card starting with Ilya Topuria versus Volkanovski. He's gonna be defending his title. I think he's lost his last two, or he's won. Volkanovski is 1-1 in his last two, but I think his last two have been versus uh, what's his name? Islam Makhachev. and he's lost his last one to head kick, so it's gonna be vulnerable. He's gonna be his most vulnerable, and Tuporia's gonna be his toughest opponent yet. He's a beast. He kind of ragdolled Bryce Mitchell, and then he's also beaten Rodriguez and Josh Emmett, so he's had a solid path up to the title. I think he has a solid shot. We're gonna be rooting for Volkanovski there, though. We'll go more in depth when the pay-per-view comes up sooner. And then the co-main, you have Cejudo versus Merab Devashvili, which is going to be an interesting fight. I don't really like Merab, but I'm not a fan of either two of them. And then you have Tai Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura, which will be a decent fight, maybe hopefully a comeback fight for Tai. And then you have Jeff Neal versus Ian Gary, which will be solid. So this is looking to be a solid main card on UFC 298. And you have Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos, 3 versus 4. I don't know much about either one of them, but I know Lemos didn't have a great fight in her last fight, fighting for the championship. And then Ikram Akraskarelov versus Anthony Hernandez. If I'm not mistaken, he's looking decent right now. Check his fight history. Yeah, so he's 15-1. Excuse me. He's 15-1. He's just fought twice in the UFC, it looks like. And then he's fighting an 11-2 Anthony Hernandez. I watched him fight once, I think, and he looked pretty decent. We're gonna take him. You got Justin Tafa versus Rodrigo de Lima. I've watched Tafa fight like once, but we're not really invested in either one of them. And that's UFC 298. So there's a couple more we can go over. You have Moreno versus Albazi on a fight card that's also co-mained by Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. So that should be a decent fight card, at least for the main and co-main. You don't really know too much about any of these people. And then UFC 299, from what I've looked at so far, is looking to be a great card. It's headlined by O'Malley Vera. And then the co-main is going to be Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis, who I think is going to end up beating him, honestly. But I'm not going to really necessarily root against him. Then you have Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. Then you have Kevin Holland versus Michael Page, and it's going to be his UFC debut, which will be a crazy good fight, which I think that could be the fight of the night. And then you have Curtis Blades versus Gelton Almeida. And then you have Caitlin Coogan versus Macy Barber. You have Mateus Gamrot versus Rafael Dos Anjos. You have Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. Pedro Munoz versus Kyler Phillips, which I know a bit about Pedro Munoz. You have Lauren Murphy fighting, who I know a bit about. And then you have Michelle Pereira. And that's what you have so far, which honestly, I can see even 2 or even 3 of these fights getting moved off this card just because this is a stacked card right now. But I could see it staying, I guess. But that just seems like a lot because you'll see some of those fights on the prelims, and who knows. But then here you have, see, that's the thing though. You have oh no, that's not Macy. Never mind. You have Aaron Blanchfield versus Manon Ferrat, which I think will be a decent fight. I've watched them both fight. And then the last 2 things they have here, you have Vittori versus Brandon Allen, which should be decent. I don't really know who that would be, a toss up, but that's going to be a decent fight night. And then UFC 300, I think they have 4 fights announced so far for UFC 300. You have Charles Oliveira versus Arman Sarukian. You have Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic. You have Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. You have Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. So right now it's shaping up to be a great card just for these being the first 4. And every fight they've announced has been almost better than the last, and they're still shaping it up. People are saying they're running out of main events for 300, but honestly, I think they'll be fine because they'll probably end up moving it maybe 1 or 2 of the UFC 299 fights down, maybe not, and they'll still keep adding this because they say they want to make this most stacked one, but we'll see. That's kind of what I have for you for all the upcoming UFC events. And then when UFC 298 comes up sooner, I'm going to make my picks for that as well as 299. But that's kind of what I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.